Hello everybody, Patrick from B Squared. Today we're going to be talking about iRacing and wheel-to-wheel battles within the game. I've learned a lot over the past 3 years of endurance racing with the Newman Racing team, and we recently won a championship, and as well I've done a lot of driver coaching over the past couple of years, so I'm bringing forth experience here and implementing what I've learned from real-life racing here in iRacing, and these are very simple things that you guys can do as well. So to get started, the first tip I would give is to put in your practice laps and get consistent. The game really penalizes drivers for improper driving. If you even put a couple of wheels outside of the track bounds, it'll probably ask you to slow down, and that will crucially hurt your lap time. So it's really important to just get really consistent. If you are going to enter a wheel-to-wheel race as part of some of the open series in iRacing, you really want to get some practice sessions in first, so you at least have references for steering and braking and throttle, obviously. But the main priority is to have a consistent path to completing a lap. Now notice I did not say fast. I think it's really easy for people to prioritize just outright speed, and you try to do some like daring moves, you try to do really late braking. A lot of people like really over romanticize, like I'm the latest braker, I turn in the most crisp, and especially in this game, it really doesn't lead to faster lap times, it's just makes you more inconsistent. So if you have proper references and you are using those and you have a feel for how you want to apply the brakes at each reference specifically, this will leave you to be way more prepared for when you actually enter battle, because you know the limit, you know how far you are away from the limit, and this is really important when it comes to spending more time closely to another competitor. So now that you've become really consistent and you started to enter the wheel-to-wheel space and entering some open series in the game, once you're out there, the next priority is to study any opponents that are near you, especially ones who you're going to be spending a lot of time with. So it doesn't matter if you qualified first or if you qualified last. The priority is to either maintain your position, or of course you want to advance your position and gain more spots. But it's so difficult in the game when the people around you are gridded by lap time. So it's really nice that you get to spend a lot of time around people in your skill level, but some of these opponents may not have the same strengths that you do, and you may not have the strengths that they do. So it's important to study them, and to do this, you need to leave enough room for both you and your opponent. For you to really see where you have an advantage, it's important to figure out, okay, where am I gaining, where am I losing time? And the priority during the race is not to try to gain time and copy them. They might have a different setup as you. They might have different comfort levels and capabilities. But you also have different advantages over them that you need to take advantage of. So I invite you to prioritize, again, being consistent, not just trying to be the fastest car out there, because trying to push during a race, trying to learn new techniques during a race is not always the best option, especially if you're spending time near another opponent. So I usually don't try to push a braking zone or implement some sort of different technique during a race, because I really care about finishing in either the position I started or of course advance to new positions. I don't want to risk going off track, or even just cutting the track boundaries will force you to slow down to prevent a penalty. So why push for the greatest lap time ever during a wheel-to-wheel race? It just doesn't make sense. So once you've studied your opponent, you're still leaving enough room for both you and your opponent to navigate the track at the same time. The next thing you want to do is take advantage of where you're faster, and if you're ahead, protect your line for where you know your opponent is faster. You know exactly where you are faster, and if you're behind, you're just going to be rubber banding with your opponent, meaning you're going to stretch and compress your distance to your opponent. And hopefully you are skilled enough to be consistent and stick with them. Doesn't matter if you're behind, stick with them and leave them room, because you are going to rubber band. So it's really important to just maintain that gap. Being in the rearview mirror of somebody for a long time puts a lot of pressure on them to make a mistake. You're just waiting for them to make a mistake, and that's okay. If you start to see where you know you're faster and you can go for the move, go for the move, as long as you understand clearly that you are within the limits of your driving capability. You are not pushing your braking zone to some new braking point that you've never explored before, which really reinforces tip number 1, where you just need to put in your practice laps and get consistent first. Don't block. Don't constantly just cover where you are. If you guys noticed in the video, I'm only doing 1 lane change into turn 1, where I'm staying on the inside generally. And that's because I know I can brake later than my opponent and they won't go for the outside pass. But this also prevents your opponent from trying to cut on your inside, because they also, if they're respectful, don't want to crash. So number 3, once you've studied your opponent, take advantage of where you know you're faster and protect your position if you are ahead. Don't rush into making a pass. It's not worth it, especially for how strict the iRacing service is with regards to penalties, contacts, and off tracks. The point of following these tips is not to get you to a point where you're just an animal and you're passing everybody else on track. The point of these tips is to advance further into the iRacing service, because it's so important to keep your safety rating and also your I rating up. So for you to prioritize getting a crazy lap time during a race, or to make really daring passes against an opponent, risking your score and your safety level, it's really detrimental to your experience in the iRacing service, because what ends up happening is your I rating and your safety rating just keep going lower and lower, and it's a lot harder to climb back up to where you were, rather than just be consistent and make incremental improvements over time. So don't rush, be patient, and it doesn't matter if you end up behind your opponent. It's more important, especially at the rookie and D-class levels, to be able to stick to your opponent and not risk your entire race because you wanted to be a hero. So to review, number 1, put in your practice laps and get consistent. Number 2, study your opponent and leave enough room for the both of you to interact around the track. And number 3, once you've studied your opponent, take advantage of where you know you're faster, and if you're able to go ahead of your opponent, make sure to cover defensively where you know they're faster. Force them to try to get around you. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you guys take these tips with you to both the real life racing tracks and as well iRacing and any other sim that you play. All of these things have made me a better racer in real life, and they make playing the iRacing service so much more satisfying to finish a race knowing that you had a really fun battle with another driver. That's what this is really about. You guys have a good one, and I will see you at the track.